Welcome to the Essential Self-Care Podcast, where we talk about all things self-care for those of us who are, let's face it, too busy for self-care. It's time to bring that same compassion that you offer to everyone else in your life to yourself as well. In this podcast, you'll hear real-life stories of how self-care transformed people's lives as they were going through life's storms. You'll learn practical, actionable tools to begin the self-care journey yourself as well. Because like I always say, small changes make a large impact. I'm your host, Dr. Sheetal Ajmani. I'm a physician, best-selling author, and the founder of Radiant Living Institute, where I guide people to get unstuck and learn to live radiantly again. Through my signature program, Reclaim Your Radiance, you'll reclaim your worth, renew your energy, and restore your happiness in your life, career, and relationships. To get started, download your free guidebook, 6 simple yet powerful steps to create your radiant life at radiantlivinginstitute.com. Quick disclaimer before we get started, the information in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always seek the advice of your own medical practitioner and or mental health provider about your specific situation. Now, let's get started. I am so excited today to bring you this solo cast episode about boosting your productivity and well-being with the use of standing breaks. I am so excited about this topic. So first, I want to share a little bit about my motivation for an inspiration for presenting this topic to you today. So I recently had the honor and the pleasure to speak at a conference. It was a lifestyle medicine conference. And in case you're not sure what lifestyle medicine is a medical specialty that uses evidence-based, whole person, prescriptive lifestyle changes to treat, prevent, and reverse chronic, long-standing conditions. It's basically this idea of using different sort of lifestyle habits, routines, patterns, and pillars to positively affect your overall health and well-being. And according to the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, there are these 6 pillars of lifestyle areas that are focused upon. And those include a whole food, plant predominant eating pattern, physical activity, restorative sleep, stress management, the avoidance of risky substances, and positive social connections. So there's a lot of research behind each one of these, and I'm not going to dive into all of those today, but definitely if you do want to dive deeper, I recommend tuning into that whole lifestyle medicine conference. The replays are available, and I had the honor of speaking about Ayurveda during that conference, which, if you're not familiar, Ayurveda is actually the ancient medical system of India, and it is an entire framework of lifestyle habits, routines in alignment with what we're talking about in modern day lifestyle medicine as well. So really fascinating information, and I will drop a link in the show notes with where you can access that entire conference. But what was really neat is that I also had the opportunity to tune into my physician colleagues' lectures and presentations that were also part of that conference. And so there were 15 of us who came together to speak and to share our wisdom and our expertise. And so a number of my colleagues spent a good portion of their talks about physical activity. And what this did is it led me to go down a rabbit hole following the completion of the conference of just searching PubMed and scientific studies and just some of the literature around particular aspects of integrating physical activity into your day-to-day life. And that's what I'm going to dive into here today, specifically looking at physical activity as well as taking stretching and standing and walking breaks throughout your workday in particular, and how that positively affects your physical well-being and your overall sense of wellness. So let's dive right in. So first of all, I want to share that the CDC recommends 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity physical activity, 150 minutes a week. And what that breaks down to is about 20 minutes a day if you are engaging in physical activity 7 days a week. So when you look at it per week, 150 minutes, that can sound like a lot perhaps, but when you really break it down to a daily basis, that's just about 20 minutes a day of moderate intensity physical activity. What does that mean? So walking counts, like walking at a moderate intensity pace. And what is really interesting, and I think the part that really caught my attention, is that this doesn't have to be all at once. So first of all, I love that when you break it down, it really isn't overwhelming, right? 20 minutes a day, like that doesn't sound like too much or too far of a stretch, perhaps. But then when you think about the fact that it doesn't even have to be all at once, like it doesn't have to be a single 20-minute stretch, well, now this gets really exciting for me, and I hope for you too, because that means that you can break it up through your day. That means you can take these short breaks of moderate intensity physical activity, which could be walking, could also be other types of activity, but walking counts. And so you can maybe break that up throughout different parts of your day and still meet these guidelines, which is so exciting, right? So I want to introduce another concept just to kind of set the stage here. And this is something that I have been practicing for the past 3 years, and it's called the Pomodoro method. And so what it is it's this concept of working for 25 minutes and then taking a 5-minute break, right? So when I'm working on things that involve me being seated at a desk, looking at my laptop, I always set a timer, and it's become such a habit for me now over the past 3 years. I set a timer for 25 minutes. I work for 25 minutes, and then I set another timer for 5 minutes, and I take a 5-minute break. And the whole idea with this Pomodoro method is that during that 5-minute break, you actually take a real break. So that doesn't mean scrolling social media. It doesn't mean checking your email. It doesn't mean, paying bills online. It means actually taking a break. So stand up, walk around, right? Maybe refill your water bottle, take a restroom break, right? It is actually like standing up, moving around, and then coming back to work after that 5-minute break. And I will be honest with you, when I first started this practice, it was kind of hard because I'm definitely the type of person who, once I'm in the zone, I don't want to take a break. And maybe you can relate to that, right? But I really stayed committed to this practice. And even though I didn't feel like taking a break because I felt like I was in the zone, I was like, well, let me just try this. Let me see how this feels. And I can share from my own experience what I have found is that I actually feel like the work that I'm doing in those 25-minute segments is much more focused, much more directed, that I am putting out much more quality, higher quality work, that I am much more efficient, and that I don't tire out as easily, right? If I just, as opposed to if I were just to push through those breaks and not give myself those breaks, I think I would experience some mental fatigue sooner in the day. So I personally, just experientially, have noticed significant benefits since using this Pomodoro method. So why am I introducing this? Because this is where I started to go deep dive in my rabbit hole of looking at these ideas of the current recommended guidelines for the amount of physical activity per week and per day, this idea that it doesn't have to be all at once, and then looking at this idea of that Pomodoro method of taking intentional breaks throughout your workday, especially if you have a job that involves you being seated at a desk. So I went on this deep dive of looking at some studies, some scientific studies. So I'm going to go over some of these studies right now with you just because I find it very fascinating and very interesting here. So there was one study that looked at morning exercise with or without breaks during the day and the effect of that on blood pressure in population of relatively sedentary adults. So the mean age of research participants were 67 years old, and they divided participants into 3 groups. And so one group participated in morning exercise of 30 minutes of moderate intensity walking. And basically what they did was 1 hour of work seated at a desk, followed by 30 minutes of moderate intensity walking. And then the rest of the workday, 6.5-hour workday, following that, they were seated at their desk. A second group did the same morning exercise routine of 30 minutes of moderate intensity walking and had scheduled breaks throughout their workday. And these scheduled breaks were 3 minutes of light walking every 30 minutes. So, does that sound somewhat familiar to that Pomodoro method of working for 25 minutes and taking a 5-minute break, right? Very similar. So in this study, it was 3 minutes of light walking every 30 minutes. And then the control group had uninterrupted 8 hours of sitting, working at their desk, right? So no morning exercise, no walking breaks throughout their workday. And what this study showed was an improvement in the blood pressure of the morning exercise group and the group that did morning exercise plus breaks, with a greater improvement in blood pressure noted in the group that did the morning exercise plus the breaks throughout the day. Now, the study also found a more significant positive impact in the females in the group versus the males. Not sure why that was seen, but that was just an observation in this study as well. But how cool is that? So not only do these breaks offer you some rest in terms of your mental focus and attention, but studies show that they also demonstrate an improvement in some health outcomes as well. There was another study that was done in children, and they found that children who took physical activity breaks of 3 minutes of moderate intensity walking every 30 minutes, so again, a similar ratio there as the previous study, versus children who engaged in 3 hours of continuous sitting, were found to have improved glucose metabolism. So again, these are just 2 studies of many that demonstrate the benefits of taking breaks at regular intervals. They don't have to be long breaks. Remember, my whole concept with this podcast, Essential Self-Care, is how can you fit self-care into your busy day, right? In these bite-sized chunks. And the idea that these small changes make a really large impact. And that's why I got so excited when I started exploring this idea, and I just really wanted to share it with you today. And while I was going down this rabbit hole, I also started looking into standing desks. So I've recently been working at a wonderful co-working space where we do have standing desks. And so this is also something I've been doing recently. And so I was like, let me look a little bit more into this as well. So I'm going to go over a couple studies about this. So there was a study, it was a small study with only 15 participants, but they were given standing desks. Participants were mainly female in this study, a mean age of about 40 years. And they took some measurements at baseline, so before the study began, at the start of the study, as well as at 3 months and 6 months. And participants were just given standing desks. They weren't instructed to, stand for a particular amount of time during the day. And these were like seated, sitting standing desks. So you could adjust it to be seated or standing. And so simply by being given these standing desks with no further instructions, the daily sedentary time at work decreased by about 90 minutes. And researchers saw a trend towards a reduction in total cholesterol and fasting triglycerides, as well as improved insulin resistance in this group. Another study also saw that there is a 5% reduction in all-cause mortality risk when we replace 1 hour of sitting per day with 1 hour of standing. And the last study I'm going to mention is a study that took place in Japan, and they looked at 74 participants who primarily worked at a desk. And the intervention group was given sit-stand desks, so meaning that you could adjust the desk to be seated or standing. And similar to the other study I mentioned, participants were asked to just work like usual. So they weren't given any specific instruction to, stand for a certain period of time of the day. They were just given these sit-stand desks. They were also given monthly education via newsletter, just on different sort of health topics and tips regarding physical activity. And after 3 months, the intervention group reported a decrease in sitting time at work. They reported an improvement in neck and shoulder pain. They reported an improvement in subjective health, meaning they self-reported that they felt healthier. They reported an improvement in vitality, in work-related engagement, and self-rated work performance. So the intervention group reported feeling healthier, reported feeling more engaged at work, and reported improved work performance, as well as improvement in muscular tension in their neck and shoulder regions, right? How amazing is this, right? So again, just key takeaways from all these studies. Why am I sharing all these studies with you? First of all, just because I personally went on a rabbit hole and I thought that you might find it interesting as well. But more importantly, just to demonstrate that this self-care practice or activity of intentionally giving yourself small, short walking or standing breaks throughout your day is an amazing practice of self-care. It might not seem like a lot when you just kind of intellectually think about it, but there is science that shows how this actually positively affects your overall well-being. So in that, not only is it just, taking a break, but you're actually doing something really positive for your overall well-being on a physical level, as is demonstrated by many of these studies. And, just experientially, as I shared my own experience of using this Pomodoro method of working for 25 minutes and then taking a 5-minute break throughout my workday, of the improved focus, attention, sense of productivity that I found as well. So I'm just really excited to share this with you, and I'm excited to hear if you decide to try it after hearing this episode. So, a couple key takeaways that I wanted to share with you here is just reiterating this idea that small changes really do make a large impact. And I hope that this episode also just gives you maybe a new way of thinking about exercise, physical movement, and about taking breaks. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a positive review, and share this episode with someone you know. And remember, your free guide, 6 simple yet powerful steps to create your radiant life, is waiting for you at radiantlivinginstitute.com. Download it today.